Hi everyone, this is Elysa Roberts, course coordinator for this class, and I just want to point out a few details about the course at this point and just get us started. And I welcome you to this class, and I hope by now you've taken the little orientation to the Blackboard site. And this is just a bit more of an orientation to the overview of the class. And I like to do some of these primer videos, I call them, a little bit of an online primer to what's coming during the lecture that week or during the labs that week, so that we kind of use our time most efficiently when we're on campus together. So again, here's ways of finding me in Hunter Building. I just want to point out our course objectives real quickly. My aim really is to help you to be able to explain how occupational therapists practice across the field of work rehab and generally in enabling participation in productive occupation. That's the big picture of what this course is all about. To do that, you'll be able to analyze the relationship between a worker, work, and the environment of that person, their productive occupation, and their environments. You'll also be able to evaluate a client's capacity to work and return to work by the end of this class, or at least have the tools to be able to do that. You will formulate a viable plan to enable transition within or re-entry into work or productive occupation during some lab exercises and to some degree during one of your main assessments, and certainly on test questions that might give case examples. And I think that you'll be able to justify the role of occupational therapy for enabling productive occupation within traditional and non-traditional or emerging practice areas, which we'll talk about a little bit in this class as well. And ultimately, you're going to learn in this class how to communicate and collaborate effectively, or build on the skills you already have of that, both in oral and written form, independently and within a group. And in this case, it'll be more of a pair when it comes to an assessment. And you'll be using the appropriate conventions of the discipline, which means you'll be making sure that your writing is coherent and concise and proofread well and uses the appropriate referencing of the APA, the American Psychological Association, 6th edition. And just so you're aware, these objectives may be a bit different than what's on the CTF on the course site for the university. And this is being updated as we speak. So please work from this. Essentially, we're going to have sort of the first 2/3 of the course are more focused on work rehabilitation and looking at the meaning and value of work for both able-bodied and disabled persons. Looking at a model for practice, or the two different models of practice that are used in work rehab, going through the steps of a work rehab process, looking at OT, what is our specific role in work rehab, looking at the application of standards and evidence to your practice. This will come out both in lecture, in your workplace assessment report, and in lab activities. We'll look at community organizations working to support inclusion in the workplace as well, and supported employment and transition to work programs, because we will look at, in this first 8 weeks, the role of our job with persons with mental illness and intellectual disabilities as well. In the final portion of the class, the last third of the class, about weeks 9 through 12 approximately, we'll focus on a broader picture, the more just productive occupation that's beyond paid employment. And we'll talk a little bit about occupational justice. We'll do a little bit of that at the beginning of the semester and at the end. We'll define what productive occupations are for adults and older adults more deeply. I will ask you to synthesize evidence to support the value of productivity for health. I'll share some of that, but I'm going to ask you to do that in one of your major assignments during the second module. And I think this will inform some roles for you as an OT to address productivity with your clients, or at least give you perspective on how to remember to think about productivity for your clients beyond paid employment. This is just a quick overview of the assessments that you'll have. There's obviously the biggest weighted assignment is your workplace assessment report that you'll do individually. The second heftiest is a comprehensive final exam, and we'll have more details on that as the semester moves forward. And then the next bigger project is what we call a productivity participation profile, and you're going to do this in pairs. And there might be a couple of you where there's a group of 3 of you, depending on the number of students in the class. But for the most part, there's really only about enough work for 2 people. And I'll give you much more detail about this later in the semester. Okay? And this exam preparation is more of a bit more of a pass-fail, if you will, kind of assessment. There will be sort of a rating of 5 points to deal with, but basically, if you complete this with reasonable effort, it's going to help you prepare for the final exam, and it's going to earn you a few points. Okay. The biggest thing that I want you to pay attention to is the bulk of your assessments come in the last portion of this class as opposed to the beginning of the class. You have much more to do in readings and preparation in the beginning, and this exam preparation is really what I'm looking for you to do to synthesize the first 8 weeks of the course so that when you go into the last portion when all the assessments are heavily due, you've gotten a good dose of things under your belt. Okay? How to get the most out of this class? First of all, I'd like you to prepare for the lectures and the labs and read ahead of time and be prepared for your participation in the lectures and the labs. I call it a lecture, but often I ask questions and we discuss, and I'd like to think that it's a bit more interactive than me talking to you for 2 hours. The same with when we have guest lecturers. I know them already, and they will be doing some interactive exercises, but they are called lecture at this university. I want you to engage both in the course by attending lectures preferably. The ECHO is really only meant to be a refresher for you, not a substitute for attending lectures. And I really would love for you to engage in the labs as well. I hope that you will discuss and reflect on the topics with your peers, with the tutors, with me, that you'll use your office hours, and that you'll clarify questions that you have early, okay, not the last minute, okay? I am a procrastinator, but that's not what I'd like you to be. I'd also like you to plan your study to ensure completion of assignments on time and with quality. And I'd like you to learn by trusting the process that I've outlined. I do things a bit differently, I think, than some of your other instructors have, just like they do things that are different from the way I do things. One thing that I can just say to you is I have a passion for being fair to students. That doesn't mean that I'm not rigorous and that I don't have high expectations. I feel like I have high expectations of myself, and therefore I have high expectations of you. And if we work together at this, I think you'll gain a lot from this course. It seemed to be the case last year. And let's see, I do want you to also take responsibility for your learning and also to apply the feedback. I spend a lot of time giving you feedback, and there's a lot of you in the class, so I hope that you'll take advantage of it. Keep in mind as well that most of us will also be in class together next year, and this is a good way for you to get to know me and my style and trust this process. And ultimately, this is a cycle that's going to go on throughout the whole semester so that you can ultimately become what I call a strategic and deep lifelong learner, as opposed to a surface learner. To be honest, we're all a bit strategic. It means you're going to do the amount of work that you need to do in order to get the grade that you want to get in this class. I get that. I do hope that particularly in this class, because the content in this class is so relevant to your potential practice, that you'll also dig into it so that you really get the depth of the learning that you can. So that's my wish for you. And this is how I hope you can get the most out of it. You're very familiar already with using blended learning, but let's just highlight a few points here. Ultimately, you've kind of gone through and you see that there will be announcements. There's a course outline. There's the Echo Center. And again, this is for refreshers more so than replacement of lectures. There's weekly folders arranged in modules, and that's where you find the details of the class schedule and all the assessment information. I will use email and communicate with you, and that will be, I usually use email if I really need you to get some information pretty quickly. So please respect that and pay attention to those messages when they come. Otherwise, I'll use announcements or use the class period. And you've got contact information from me and even the tutors for when you need them. So my big recommendation is please visit Blackboard early and often. Feedback works best as a loop between the two of us. So this is very important for becoming a professional that you already are becoming and just for your education. Read over the course outline. I know that you've seen very much the same information for over 3 years now. I just think that it's important to make sure that you read what I highlight in the course outline because you've never had me as an instructor, and this way it's the best I can do. I can't tell you everything, and I can't read you the course outline, but I want you to know what's in there. So I really take it upon you to read that carefully. The tutors and I will often give you feedback on your participation, and I hope that you use that feedback and that affects what you do in the next assignment and the next assignment. And then at the same time, I want feedback from you. I'm going to probably ask you at certain points in the semester or through some of the technology that I use in class for some informal feedback. Sometimes it will be anonymous as well. So I hope that if I ask you to write something down during lecture or lab, that you'll do that for me. And then I really, really hope that you will complete the student feedback on the course at the end of the semester. We're doing pretty good. I've got at least 45 to 70% response rate on some of these. So I hope that you will help me out and keep things at least above 50% of the class responding. And when you do have feedback from me, even before these formal ways or informal ways, please do so in a respectful manner and in constructive ways. I certainly welcome your constructive feedback. And I'd love for you to speak to me before you kind of feel like you have to go over my head, which I understand, and it's your right. I just hope that we can figure things out together before we go that route, because sometimes I'll need to go over my head and find out answers to questions to help us. And otherwise, I just hope you enjoy the class.